So I finally finished Jessica Jones.
Okay. Take us into your world, Jeffrey. How did you like it?
I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was really good. All of your commentary around Mr. Purple or Kilgrave, whatever you want to call him, being like an excellent villain. I'm not going to lie, when we were having that conversation, I was maybe only about 2/3 or halfway through the season, probably about 2/3. And I was like, okay, I kind of see what you're talking about. But then by the end of it, I'm like, yep, he's almost as good as, I think Kingpin was a slightly better villain, but Kilgrave is pretty freaking good too.
Totally. And that was going to be my next question. Which did you like better, Jessica Jones or season 1 of Daredevil?
I think I liked season 1 of Daredevil a little bit more. There was, I don't know, about half of, and it wasn't even necessarily like the first half, the middle portion or what have you, but there was just a section of Jessica Jones where it just felt aimless for a little bit. And I'm not really sure what was going on.
For me, I agree with you. For me, I felt like it was just too much time and not enough story, like, because they basically just spent the whole season on the Kilgrave thing. And I was really into that most of the time, but a lot of the time it just felt like it wasn't really going anywhere and they weren't making any real progress with it.
This is the dark one, guys. Marvel TV show.
Yeah, the Netflix TV shows.
Darker than Agent Carter and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Well, everything that Marvel does is darker than Agent Carter or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I watched 2 episodes of that and gave up forever. I heard it got better, but I just never went back.
So I'm almost in the same boat. I've watched more than 2 episodes, but not tons more for a lot of the same reasons. I have a coworker who obsesses over this stuff, and so he always tells me about how it got so good. It's really hard for me to go back to it because the first few episodes were really cheesy, really dull. I felt like I was watching Arrow or Flash or whatever, which DC just does not do it for me, and that was the same vibe I was getting from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, I think for me, there's just too much good stuff. Like, I actually really liked the first couple seasons of Arrow, and I really liked the first season of Flash, and I was watching them week to week, but there's so much other good stuff that I want to watch. I just didn't have time for it. It got pushed out, because it really is kind of like, I don't know, potato chip guilty pleasure viewing.
All right, cool. Well, let's get into it. As always, this is the podcast where we critically discuss films and the books they are adapted from. Tonight, we're going to be discussing Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. It is Gillian, right? Not Jillian?
Gillian. Like Gilligan's Island, only without the island.
It's Gillian.
She says it. Mm-hmm. Gillian.
The book was released back in 2012, and the movie was released in 2014 from director David Fincher. Screenplay was written by Gillian Flynn herself. Lead actors were Ben Affleck and Rosamund Pike.
Everyone told us marriage is hard work. Not for me and Nick.
As you all know, my wife, Amy Elliott Dunn, disappeared 3 days ago. I had nothing to do with the disappearance of my wife.
We'll go around the horn real quick and say how we consume this and which you experienced first. I'll go ahead and start. I read the book via Audible on a cross-country drive with my wife driving back from the Ozarks in Arkansas. I thought the book was fantastic. I loved it. My wife absolutely hated it. Mm-hmm. It was, I thought it was truly compelling. Great story, really dark and mysterious. And I was taken along with all the different twists and everything in the narrative. And I will say, I guess I should throw this out there. There will be spoilers in this episode of the podcast. So if you haven't read the book or seen the movie, then that's your fault. And because we're just going to talk about it.
Spoilers throughout.
Yeah, I thought that was great. And then I saw the movie. I did not see the movie in theaters. I saw it shortly after it was released on Blu-ray or whatever it was. Michael, how about you? How'd you consume and in which order?
I also listened to it on Audible like 4 years ago, close to when it came out, I guess. And I loved it too. I mean, you can believe the hype about this one. It's a huge smash success for a reason. I mean, it's a great book. And I particularly like listening to it. I really liked how they had different narrators for the Nick parts and for Amy parts. I thought both of those voice actors did a great job and helped, deepen the experience for me. And I freaking love the movie too. I'm a David Fincher fanboy. So
amen to
I was
that.
very excited. I saw it in theaters and loved it.
What else have you seen from him?
Pretty much everything. I mean, so he did Seven, he did Fight Club, Zodiac, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, movie called The Game, Social Network. Half of those are book adaptations, so I'm sure he'll come up again.
Huh.
David Fincher did say that this was going to be his last movie. Is that?
What?
No.
Was that right?
That's not right.
Wow.
Where did you hear that?
I don't remember. I just remember hearing that he was going to be slowing down and wasn't going to take on additional work. But I'm looking at it right now that he's doing TV stuff.
Yeah,
So maybe he's shifting towards television. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, he directed the first episode of House of Cards. Like he's responsible for the aesthetic. All the way House of Cards looks is because of David Fincher. And he actually was working on a TV show with Gillian Flynn after they worked together on this. I mean, I think he has like a couple projects out there in the works.
The only project, according to IMDb, is a TV series called Mindhunter.
Yeah, I heard about that. That looks awesome.
So, but yeah, Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, Social Network, Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That one might be.
Oh,
in your lexicon.
Yeah, we gotta do that one. My lexicon. Interesting. All right, it's my turn. I read the book. I read it on Kindle. I actually read words on a screen. And I don't know. I guess I was trying to hear voices in my head and not Ben Affleck's voice. I knew who the actors were, so I was trying to just kind of make it my own and not see or hear them. But that's kind of hard, so I kind of just ended up doing that. But gosh, it really sucked me right in. And what's funny is that when Jeff went on said road trip, he kind of spoiled the movie for me, or the book and the story. And I told him, you asked
me to.
I did, and I said, "Look, I'm never gonna read this. I'm never gonna watch it. Just tell me. I don't care. I really want to know." And I didn't forget after all those years. I knew what was coming to a degree, but I also was excited to get there because I didn't know how it was going to get there. So I knew the ending, but I was still engaged. I gotta say though, the big reveal was tempered due to my knowledge of the plot. Yeah, so that's my experience. And then I just watched the movie shortly thereafter. I wanted to get a really good comparison, so I watched it pretty much right away after finishing the book.
I mean, so here's a question. What do you consider to be the big reveal? That she's alive?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I consider that to be the what moment. And, well, the fact that he's cheating was pretty what as well.
Yeah.
But the fact that she's alive and set the whole thing up, I don't know. I want to hear it from one of you guys who didn't have any spoilers, what that was like for you.
I mean, I think there are so many twists and turns in that thing. I mean, the two that you just mentioned are the ones that are memorable. You know, like I remember, I forget the exact phrasing he used, and this is something that was missed in the movie. But when you find out that he's cheating, he's like, "Oh, this is the part where you all start to hate me," you know, because you find out that I have a mistress. And that was the first time I was like, okay, I thought I knew what was going on. Obviously don't know anything about anything. And you just get pulled in. I mean, but I guess I agree. I mean, the big what moment is when you find out that she's alive and she orchestrated the whole thing, you know, but then she also cuts a guy's throat mid-coitus and, you know, they end up together. I mean, so it's all pretty surprising stuff.
Yeah, so I watched the movie edited. I'm sorry. Everyone who listens has to know that I'm a huge softy when it comes to this kind of stuff. So I watched the movie edited. I ended up not seeing that final murder scene, and I think that tainted my view of her because I didn't see her as really all that evil, whereas I think if you were to see her kill that guy the way that she did, you come away thinking that this is a complete psychopath. And so I think that was an important scene. I should not have skipped it, but I did, and yeah, she's evil.
This is one of the areas where I actually find a pretty solid contrast between the book and the movie, at least for me in the way I experienced it. And you guys can have experienced it completely differently. But I remember in reading the book, so you certainly don't like Nick, but you empathize with him a little bit more toward the end of the book in the way that it builds everything up and it lays out how Amy is just conniving and evil and all these different things. And he's writing this secret book in the basement, or I might be getting a few of those details wrong, but he's writing this secret book that's going to reveal her treachery and all this stuff. And then he gets suckered into basically staying with her at the end. And so you feel a little bit bad for him in some ways. But I think the movie did a really excellent job. And I think this is one of the things Fincher was trying to accomplish of making you dislike both of them somewhat equally. One is a murderer, but the other one is an adulterer and all this other stuff.
Yeah, and who deserves justice in the end? Did he deserve everything that she did to him because he's so bad? And would you have felt more satisfied if she had gone to prison, or if they had both gone to prison?
But hold on. Why should he go to prison? So he cheated on her, That's
bad, Michael.
Yeah, but in the context when you're comparing that to she faked her own death, tried to frame him for murder with this intricate plot, and then killed a guy in cold blood.
I guess what I'm saying is, do you want him to go to prison? Do you want the framing to work out and her to get away with it and him to go to jail?
No.
Because
Is this just my maleness speaking? I just
I don't
feel good about that. I mean, and here I I guess I have a thing too. I don't really think of her as evil either. You know, I mean, she kind of comes across as a bit insane, you know, and obviously a person in pain, you know, but it doesn't feel evil.
I think she's a complete psychopath. Just the complete lack of emotion that she feels over everything that's going on. I think she's a complete psychopath.
But so that's a paradox, you know, because how could someone be a psychopath and not have any feelings, but obviously be driven, you know, to do these extreme actions?
Well, that's true because of the hatred that she feels.
Yeah, I mean, if she didn't care, if she didn't have feelings, I mean, so there's something else going on.
Yeah, she's not like a Joker character just out to make chaos. Like, she has a goal and she wants something out of it, whether it's just the satisfaction of him getting what she feels he deserves or what.
Right. Well, I mean, a psychopath doesn't mean that they're just in it for the carnage, right? Like, they may have very well laid out plans for why they're trying to do the things that they're trying to do. But Michael's right. I mean, being a psychopath means that you're completely devoid of emotion, which you see that in her from time to time with the way that she interacts with people. But then you know, Michael's got a great point with the amount of hatred that she feels towards Nick. And then I'd also point to the way that Rosamund Pike played it when she gets kind of accosted or whatever in the hotel room. You can see fear on her face and things like that. So she's obviously feeling some sort of emotions, but just the merciless way with which she just murders Desi, and she completely approaches that with no sense of remorse whatsoever. And then you hear about the ex-boyfriend, all this other stuff. She's an interesting character regardless, right?
Yeah.
That she would go to this extent, and she's obviously brilliant, which goes into the Amazing Amy thing, which got underplayed a little bit in the movie.
Oh yeah.
Understandably, but it was a little bit disappointing because I think that tells so much about her background and her character and why she is the way that she is.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think you could make the argument though that she was trapped and that it was somewhat an act of self-defense. What other way would she have gotten out of that situation with Desi? I don't think she should have killed him, right? But how else could she have done it?
For a second, I thought you meant that her framing Ben Affleck for murder was self-defense, and I was really excited to hear you explain that to us.
Sorry, no, the Desi stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of go with you there. I mean, it's kind of an extreme approach, you know, because you could also just leave the house.
She couldn't. How could she leave? She could not leave.
She couldn't leave and still, you know, be innocent. You know, like, I actually, now that I'm thinking about this more, I'm completely the other way. Because the only reason she had to kill him was that so she would have a credible story and reason to come back. Like, oh, this guy kidnapped me and I had to kill him in self-defense. At any point, if she really felt threatened or in danger, she could have just called the cops. She could have left. But then that would mean going and facing the music for what she did, because she's obviously not dead. All these other questions would come up.
Which she was not about to do.
Right. So it's definitely not self-defense. It's her wanting to, you know, perpetuate the lie and kind of get away with it. And he was just a pawn in the game.
Yeah, it's all about self-preservation. She's 100% in it for her. And in a lot of ways, that's the relationship between her and Nick, right? Is when he's acting the part and he's playing the part the way that she wants him to play it. And it's benefiting her life, then she's happy and she's doing all the other wonderful things to be a good wife and all that stuff. But, you know, I just think it's so interesting
Well, here, while you're thinking, let me tell you what I think is really interesting. Because it's an unreliable narrator when we're looking into the past, we really have no idea what actually happened in their relationship, you know, because we have her word that, oh, you pepper it with some truth and you pepper it with some falsehoods, you mix it all together. But, you know, all this stuff where we see her being normal and them having, like, her being nice, we have no idea if that's how it worked, you know, like, we have no idea what their relationship was actually like.
In the book?
Either.
Or in the movie?
Well, both. She does say that she starts off...
I don't know.
You have to take her word for it, right? But she says she starts off telling the truth of how it initially started, all the good stuff.
Yeah.
And then she starts peppering things in. But to Michael's point, you're 100% taking her word that's what she's doing.
She is an unreliable narrator. Everything you're reading is her falsehood. And then if she then says, oh, yeah, but that one part was truth, like, you have no way of knowing that that's the way it actually happened.
But we know Nick. The thing I like about the book is that we get to know Nick well enough to know that he completely checked out. He was done. He was ambivalent towards her towards her life. He knew nothing about her day-to-day and what she did. He was clueless. And I think the movie shows that a little bit, where he's just sitting on the couch and he signs the life insurance policy and he's just watching TV or on his laptop or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I think it's better exemplified even with the whole thing where she's got this best friend that he doesn't even know about.
Right,
Because obviously
exactly.
she was spending time with that lady, regardless of whether or not she actually cared about her, but she was still spending all kinds of time with that lady and he had no clue.
And I think we can, by that evidence, we can trust that her narrative was somewhat truthful in that not that he was violent or that he was threatening to kill her, but that he had completely checked out, wanted a divorce, and that's why he even ran off with the mistress, right?
Yeah, but the thing that you have to keep in mind is that we have no idea what her reaction was, what her behavior was like. Because now we're getting a version of events where she was the perfect wife and he, veered off the cliff.
Well, and you hear how much Margot hates her, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And all this other stuff. And so you hear that stuff and it's just like, well, where's that side? Because we're not getting any information about that side, because for all of Nick's many faults, he doesn't bring up in the course of the narration in either the book or in the movie what it was really like living with her at times.
Yeah, and obviously
it's all these like offhand comments about how it was awful and she's a bit. You don't get any actual real stories of what it was like to live with her. But on the flip side, she's talking about how perfect of a wife she was, and so you just never know.
Yeah, and obviously I'm not making an argument that excuses, whatever behavior that he did later, but I'm just saying we don't really know what really happened.
It's funny how it's all somewhat of all these things happen with the exception of the murder and the deception, to this level, but it all happens in marriage to a degree. I think when you hear Gillian talk about her idea for two people, they meet, they're kind of fake because they want the other to like them, and then as life goes on and you drop the act, right? And it was just a very twisted version of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little too real. I mean, I think, Jeff, that's probably what your wife is responding to. It just hit a little close to home for her because she's been planning your murder for like months now. But I think that's one of the big strengths of the book versus the movie is that you get so much of this like real life detail. Like it's such a personal book. You get a little bit of it through the voiceover from Amy and from Nick at times. But there's just like a lot of it in the book, like all these observations about relationships, about men, about women. And that's something that for me was unique to the book. You didn't get that level of detail in the movie. It was more just strictly the story, and moving things forward.
Yeah, and I love the line of where he basically says, it's kind of one of the last lines, and he says, "I'm a great husband because I'm very afraid that she may kill me." And that just made me laugh. And the ending was hilarious to me. In the book, I couldn't help but laugh. And I think they pulled it off quite well in the movie when you look at Ben Affleck's face in that last scene and he just looks so miserable. But that from now on he's going to be the perfect husband. And we all kind of want to be, maybe it's not I'm a great husband and I want to be the perfect husband because I'm afraid she may kill me, but I'm afraid I may be put in the doghouse or whatever it is, whatever our motivation is. We all have one.
Yeah.
We all want to be great.
It's interesting.
So you guys are digging in a little bit to some of the adaptation conversation. You want to take that a little further. Any other specific comments on adaptation? Things that went well, things that did not go well?
Well, I think it was a great adaptation. I mean, there are strengths of the book and strengths of the movie. I mean, I think David Fincher is one of my favorite directors, so I'm a little biased there. I mean, I love his visual aesthetic. I think he's a great visual director. And, just being able to see, I think he's really good with actors too. I thought all the actors that he chose and the performances he got out of them were really, really good. Especially Medea herself. I thought that was awesome. One of my favorite characters in the movie. So it was just good, but the book had something special. There was a level of intimacy in reading the book that I feel like the movie didn't quite capture for me. And it's a little bit of what I was talking about before, because you get in both of their heads so deep, and it's so many of these personal insights and personal observations, and it just really, really goes deep, I think. And the movie does that a little bit, but not quite as much.
I've got two comments on the adaptation that I didn't love, and I think one of them is a style choice, and that's fine. It just didn't work for me super well, and the other one might be a little bit bigger. But generally, I was in love with the majority of the casting. I thought Margot was extremely well cast, and I thought that the detectives and Tyler Perry and all the surrounding cast was really, really solid. Two things that I wasn't entirely certain of. I guess I'll touch the
If you say Ben Affleck wasn't good, we're gonna have a problem.
No. I thought no. Ben Affleck was great.
He was excellent.
We don't even need to go down that road. No, I'll go with the less confrontational one first. One of the things that did not work as well as I think it could have for me, and I recognize that in any adaptation, you're going to have to cut content. But I felt in many ways that the Desi confrontation and storyline was significantly weaker and did not have quite as much of a payoff. They cheated a little bit in terms of getting the payoff. And when I say cheated, that's probably not the right word, but the way that he's murdered in the movie is a pretty spectacular sight. and it like that in and of itself gives you that kind of big payoff as to what's happening there. But aside from that, I felt that the majority of the rest of it was weak. I don't know if it was because it was a bad casting decision, even though I like Neil Patrick Harris and a lot of different stuff. I don't know if it was just not enough time on screen with that character. What I think it might be more than anything is just not necessarily enough background on the relationship with that character. Like they kind of allude to the fact that there was this stalking relationship and other stuff, but in the book they go into a lot more detail to where you really kind of get a sense of what this guy's like and what kind of the pitfalls of that relationship and why it might mean something. And then it goes through the rest of it and it feels like a significant series of events. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on that, but that was a little disappointing for me.
I think I'm with you. I mean, so for me, I think it was the casting. Neil Patrick Harris, I think that took me out of it. I was fine with how they set it up, because he's introduced pretty early. He's sprinkled throughout, and then it comes back around as Nick is investigating her previous relationships and all that. I mean, so I felt like that was all fairly solid groundwork. I guess there's just something about his performance that didn't work for me, that I didn't quite buy.
It was almost like they were trying to play him too sweet and not creepy enough. I'm not really sure what was going on because reading the book, I just got the vibe that like this guy's got a screw loose somewhere. He's a little creepy. Watching the movie, like there were a couple small moments where like the creepiness came out, but like a lot of it was just like overly sweet.
Not enough creepiness. You didn't feel like he really deserved to die, right?
Yeah, he definitely didn't deserve to die.
Well, I don't think he deserved to die, period, in the book either. I mean, that's one of it's one of the big shockers, period, that she decides that she's going to kill him.
Yeah.
I don't know. He didn't bother me. He didn't bother me all that much. I liked that he was just this doting, sweet, obsessed guy, and I think he sold that. But I don't know. I see what you're saying, that it didn't translate well from page to screen. And I don't think it has anything to do with the actor. I think maybe it's the writing, maybe it's just the way that they engaged in their chemistry, but I don't think it was his fault.
Yeah, I can't put my finger on it, but I just could never forget that I was watching Neil Patrick Harris, and I felt like I could let that go for pretty much everyone else.
Yeah, there's something to that. Yeah.
Do you guys want me to bring up the more controversial?
Yeah, let's hear it.
That I'm not sure about.
Of course.
I don't know that I liked Rosamund Pike.
Yep, that's definitely controversial.
The Academy would disagree.
Well, she didn't win.
Okay, fair enough.
Hear me out. I think that she did an admirable job with the role. I think that it was a bad cast. Okay, bad casting choice is too strong. I feel as though it was not the best casting choice, and I don't necessarily have a solution.
Yeah. No, you have to. You have to pitch who would you want instead. You can't say that.
Who would I want instead?
So I'll say this. Reese Witherspoon had, she was going to be producing and starring in this for a while before David Fincher got it. So that's who you could have had. Legally Blonde.
I would not have liked her.
We got a better option there. So the reason I say this about Rosamund Pike is because I just felt, so when I don't know, and this is probably 100% the fault of the fact that I listened to the book on Audible versus reading it on a page. But Michael, you'll remember this. The lady that does the narration and for the Audible book is a significantly different voice. It's a lot more of a cool girl, light, higher pitched voice that just gives you a completely different feel for who Amy is. And in the movie, Rosamund Pike just came across completely differently.
Yep, I know what you mean.
I don't know that I liked it.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, not as cool. She doesn't play the cool girl part very well.
It makes some of those aspects of the character harder to believe for me.
Yeah.
Too stiff. I felt like she was too stiff.
And
maybe excuse my language, she comes across as a stone cold the whole time.
Yeah.
But she's supposed to sell you on the fact that she was the cool girl and super fun and all this other stuff.
I don't think we will forgive that language, Jeffrey. I don't think we will. And actually, I'd like to go on record and retract my Reese Witherspoon comment. Because actually,
Really?
she's been in some good stuff. I mean, did you guys see Wild? I mean, she put in a solid performance there.
I can't tell if Michael's being serious.
And actually, I like Legally Blonde. I think that's a fantastic movie. So I don't know why I was being
the first
snarky
one's
about
good.
it. Yeah, well, she's not in the second one, so. Or is she in the second one? I haven't seen it, so never mind.
She's too well known. She can't play this role because I felt like she was too well known. She's too...
It's not like Rosamund Pike just like climbed off the ship or something. Right?
Well, what had you seen her in before this besides Jack Reacher?
Much less well known. She's in Jack Reacher?
Yeah, she's the girl in Jack Reacher. That's the only thing that I could think of that I'd seen her in. I mean, I probably have seen her in other things, but don't remember her.
I bet a lot more people saw Gone Girl than Jack Reacher.
Well, Jack Reacher was a pretty good movie, too.
Yeah, no, you've probably got to... Oh, she was in Surrogates. That's the other thing I'm remembering her from.
Never saw it.
She's not a star. I do not consider her a star.
She was a Bond girl.
I don't think you could have casted a Anne Hathaway, Julia Roberts, I don't know, Meg Ryan. Okay, she's older now, but...
Meg Ryan. You couldn't have casted Meg Ryan in You've Got Mail era.
Right. 80s Meg Ryan.
Well, they cast Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck's a good big star.
Yeah, but he's an actor, man. Ben Affleck, he disappears. Batman disappears when he throws down a smoke bomb because he's basically a ninja. Continue on.
I can't. Okay, but it couldn't be Jennifer Garner is what I'm saying. It had to have been someone slightly less well known.
Well, yeah, because they're having a messy divorce, so that's not comfortable. And you can't do Jennifer Lopez either, because of that history. I mean, so who's left?
Rosamund Pike.
Exactly.
Rooney Mara would have been more convincing in this.
Rooney would have been pretty good.
She would have been more convincing. And she's not my favorite either. And so I don't know. I don't have a solution for it. There were parts where I thought Rosamund Pike was pretty good. There were other parts where I was struggling.
Yeah, she had to be a duplicitous character, and I think she leaned way too far in the dark side. She didn't show enough. With the media circus and everything going on and everyone looking at this relationship and wanting to believe that they're happy and they're back together, she was too cold. Even in those scenes where she had to fake happiness, it was too cold.
Yeah, I think
there was no bubbliness to her whatsoever.
Yeah, she wasn't
and that
bubbly.
seems to come across...
Bubbliness.
That comes across very heavily in the book. And granted, it's probably the fault of the fact that I listened to it on Audible and they chose a bubbly-ish narrator for the role of Amy for the audiobook. But I feel like that's part of the cool girl aspect of it, right? That they try to hype up in the story and it's just not
You
there.
do get a sense, that you're watching, you get a sense that she is just kind of an uptight person trying to pretend to let loose, but really she's uncomfortable.
Yeah. And as you're reading, the voice and the tone as you're reading, it's not just audible. Like you imagine or you hear someone that's a lot more likable, relatable. I don't think the audible was at fault. The voice in audible. I think the voice in our heads as we read is also bubblier.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, if we ever get a sponsorship, it better be Audible because I'm pretty sure we just talk extensively about their audiobooks.
Love Audible.
Just throwing that out to the universe.
And Squarespace seems to be a great platform to design and build your own website.
Okay, no more free advertising. No more free advertising.
You know what I really like?
All right.
Best Buy.
Oh, gosh.
A really great retail chain that'll be around forever.
All right, Michael.
No,
Michael, did
Michael's
you?
Done. I have to throw this in. I thought that all acting and all that aside, I loved the things that they enhanced the movie with that weren't necessarily in the book, such as her perfectionism and how she just wanted to win at mini golf and that comment of, you guys aren't playing by the rules. Like just these funny little moments that show that she really is this anal, uptight perfectionist. And how, that was the only one I remember. But they peppered it with a few more things as well. And the whole relationship with the parents, I just wanted to bring that up. I thought the parents were well acted.
I thought all the supporting cast was fantastic across the board.
Yeah.
And I agree that you don't get enough Amazing Amy stuff in the movie. They just kind of threw it out in the beginning and then a few mentions here and there. But I thought that was a miss on the adaptation because in the book you really get the sense she has to be perfect. She has to be Amazing Amy. Amazing Amy cannot have a failing marriage because that's just another thing that she's failed at. And so she has to have an out. And the out is horrific and terrifying, but it's the only out that she can see. So I thought that was understanding that relationship is interesting.
I totally agree, because that's a big motive. Thank you for bringing that up, because I think that is a major motivation for her, depending on the way that you understand the way the book tells you that story. And that's completely missed. And so again, it goes to this whole thing about how I think that, Amy just gets portrayed as kind of psychotic, unfeeling, all this other stuff, when the book does not portray her that way. And the Amazing Amy piece, to your point, is a big hole and gap in her backstory that you just don't get a sense.
Well, so let me build on that, because I think you really miss all the narration, because where you get that in the book is from her voice telling you how all this stuff relates, and in the movie you don't have a majority of that voiceover, so you only get like the 2 or 3 scenes where the Amazing Amy thing comes up like outright. And I think generally that's where the movie maybe was a step down from the book, because it was a lot less personal. I guess this is something we kind of chatted about already, but they made a conscious choice to cut out a lot of that narration and only use it, a handful of times. Whereas the book is, obviously all narrated from these 2 characters. So you have not only the events, but their interpretation and worldview and all of that as the story is progressing.
Yeah. That, and there was one more thing I was going to bring up. I really think we could talk about that whole parenting thing both on Amy's side and on Nick's side, because his relationship with his father wasn't really played up all that much in the movie.
Yeah, it got totally cut out.
His relationship with his mother as the one who loves him unconditionally. You get that from Margot. You don't get it as much from the mom, because she dies too early. But basically, I actually think that that's a success of the adaptation, though, is that because Margot's like that to a degree in the book, but you get an overwhelming sense of that in the movie. Mm-hmm. And I think that's actually a strength of the adaptation, knowing that they couldn't cover everything. They had Margot fill that role fill both of those roles essentially in his life. Yeah, and he needed... It's funny how we all kind of feel like Nick, where you just want to be loved for who you are. You just want to be appreciated and loved unconditionally, and you don't really want people to have that high of expectations for you. It's such an interesting thing that your parents... I don't know. I love the different relationships that are happening in this whole book. So father to son and mother to son, and then, daughter to mother and father and whatnot. And then when they come together, these 2 backgrounds, and they clash, and it's just almost like this perfect storm that ends in, this horrific thing that really in the end looks happy. And I think we debated a little bit about happy ending. Is the ending a happy ending? And It's not, even though it looks that way. And if you're watching this unfold on CNN or whatever through the media, it looks like they're happy ever after, right?
I think that's one of the more ironic points of the movie, is that it's the happy ending that everybody wants, but in reality, it's terrifying, right? Because they're going to bring a child into that relationship.
Yeah.
Ooh. Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And so the child is like the ultimate victim, right?
Yeah. Ooh. Gone Girl 2.
Yeah. Sequel 20 years from now. It's going to be freaky.
Hey, and
so one more.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to bring one more piece that I think was not handled necessarily as well in the movie. I remember when we were listening to the book, like he keeps referring to the cell phone in his pocket, and it keeps coming up, and you just have this lingering question: what is going on with this cell phone? Like, is Amy alive and she's texting him? Is this a big ruse? Like, what is everything that's happening? And then there's the big reveal that he's having an affair with this 18, 20-year-old girl, however old she is at the time of that the story takes place. And it was funny because I had to point out to my wife, yeah, did you see those times he was checking the cell phone in his pocket? And she's like, I had no clue, because people just compulsively check their cell phones nowadays. And so it's not something that you're necessarily going to 100% see and notice. And so it completely flew over her head, and she missed out on the majority of that. I think there were some of those subtle things that happened in the story that they didn't quite carry over super well. I think that, the way the fact that the whole mall scene and going and finding out that Amy was buying a gun, that was completely different. I think you lose some aspects of characterization and things there as well. But I recognize
it's interesting what Gillian herself, as the writer of the screenplay, it's almost like a second attempt at it, a second crack at it. In a way, right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember in the build-up to this movie coming out, I mean, all the press and stuff, there's a big story about how she had rewritten the ending and how it was a totally different third act, and it's really pretty much the same, but I think she did a good job as far as adapting her own work. But I was going to say, as a positive for the movie, I thought the score was really good. I thought the
Oh, yeah.
atmosphere and kind of the tone and feel of it is something that you really only get in the movie because of the way the music works with the visuals and stuff. I mean, so I thought that was pretty cool.
Trent Reznor has proven that he is highly adept at these atmospheric type movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's created that the scene where he goes to the shed, you're expecting something so terrifying, and it ends up just being a bunch of stuff. But the score really gave you that feeling that he's going to find hung bodies or just something creepy, and they build up to that scene really well. Yeah, I like the score a lot.
Yeah.
Just one other thought, because it's so interesting that she comes back, because she was planning on killing herself, but she decides to come back, and the reason that she decides to come back is hilarious to me, because in the end, this whole time, she just wants to be understood. She wants someone to get her. And I went back and read a few lines. She says, "Isn't that the point of every relationship, to be known by someone else, to be understood? Gets me. She gets me. Isn't that the simple magic phrase?" Was that bubbly enough? And then she decides to come back. He says, "I only said that stuff so you would come back." And she says, "Yes, you get me. You know me. It's because you understand me so well." That's so messed up. Just amazing that's what does it. And then she points out to him, you can't leave me now. You can't go anywhere. Not because of the baby, and not so much because it would be a bad media story, but because he craves her. He craves her drama. I just thought that was so fascinating.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too. Because it is interesting, if nothing else. How do you go to just like a regular relationship after that?
Well, and she says, "I killed for you." What other girl has killed for you? Ugh, creepy. All right, take us away, Jeff.
So we've dug into the book quite a bit. Do you guys want to go ahead and jump into recommendations and ratings?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yes.
Okay. So again, rules are rate both the book and the movie on 5-point scale, 5-star scale, whatever you want to call it. And Kyle, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I have a hard time. I'm really stingy with my 5s, and our listeners will know that by now. I can't, though I was engaged and enthralled and I couldn't put it down, and it was just such a captivating story, and I loved the characters and just getting into their heads. I just can't give it a 5. I don't know why. So it's a 4. I would say it's really on the border of a 5, but I have to give it a 4. The movie as well, I'm going to have to give a 4, just due to some of the things that I was missing in the book. But just, it's a great film. It's really well made, well directed, acted. Everything works great. And that leads me to my recommendation. I think if you really could only do one, I would say see the movie. That's
interesting.
That's what that's what I would recommend. And I think it's because it's fun to see everything play out on the screen. It's a great read, but you get the big plot points, the big twists and turns. You get that all from the movie. I don't think you're going to miss out. You're not missing much from not reading, and it's cool. It's cool to see it play out on the screen. The only reason you wouldn't like the movie is if you had just read the book. And I know that's typically how these things go, but you'll enjoy the movie well enough on its own.
All right. So for me, the book is a solid 4. I think, I don't know. I go back and forth on whether or not I want this to be a 5. There are a few small problems with the book, and it doesn't get off topic, but it tends to kind of circle around certain things a little bit longer than you expect it to. Certainly thinking back on it in retrospect, but it is an incredibly solid story. I'm a little stingy with my 5s as well. That's a piece of it. I kind of almost want to give this one a 5, but I think I'm gonna stick with a 4 for the book. The movie is more challenging for me than even that after I agonized over what I wanted to give the book. The movie is a little bit more difficult for me, and the reason why is because I think if you take David Fincher as a director out of it and you take out some of the quality of performances, I think it's a 3.
Did you just say that? Let's assume the movie was completely different.
Yeah.
Then I would rate it.
No. Well, let me finish this. And the reason why is because of the adaptation, right? So I don't love the adaptation. I think the adaptation leaves too much on the table, leaves out things that are incredibly important to the way that to the motivations and true characterization of the characters. And so from that perspective, the movie is lesser, except that David Fincher is amazing and some of the performances are just so good. Taking Ben Affleck and Rosamund Pike out of it, just the majority, if not all of the surrounding cast is just so good in this movie. It's a 4, but I do think it's lesser than the book because of the adaptation itself. For me, my recommendation, read the book. I think merely from the fact that you get a very different read of who Amy is as a character, more history and backstory on her and why she is the way that she is. For all those reasons, I think the book is a better telling of the story itself.
Interesting. Both of you, interesting. I give the book a 5, the movie a 4. I think the book is not without its flaws. It's obviously not a perfect book. I mean, nothing's perfect. I guess I'm also not as stingy with my 5s. I just think about what kind of experience it was. Did I feel pulled along? Was I surprised? Did I react? Did I feel things? And the book did all that for me. And I think the movie is obviously really good as well, and I like the movie a lot, but it didn't quite match that same level of experience for me. And I can't tell if that's because I already had seen it, and so the twists were already, maybe that's the kind of thing you can really only do once. But for me, I felt like you get into the head of these characters, and you know them so well, and you're really seeing a clear point of view, whereas the movie is just kind of an omniscient account. We're just kind of seeing it as it is. And for me, that puts the book a little bit higher. And so I would recommend that people, if they can only do one, the book is probably a more singular experience.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys, for your recommendations and everything tonight. Thank you to all of our wonderful, beautiful listeners out there. And Audible, do not hesitate to contact us as a potential sponsor. We would love to have you.
Gorditas at Taco Bell, now $2 off.
Quesalupa.
All right. Say goodnight, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.